Hey guys, how are you? I'm Bruna. I'm your Turkish series summary channel, and if you like this type of content, do not forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel if not subscribed. Done this for pro video. The episode begins with Ira and is that he is in the room. And Ekta took Ira by force into the room, for she wants to show Ira who he is and tells Ira that she waited a long time to do this, but that she will now show Ira who he is. Ira was very scared and constantly asks Hector not to come near her, but Yekta ignores Ira's words and tells Ira that she is his wife and that she wants her to be his. Ira then punches Ekta's lower parts and manages to escape to the door. But as soon as she arrives at the door and Ekta goes after her, Ira then grabs a vase that was on the table and breaks it over Ekta's head, causing him to faint. Ira then locks the bedroom door, leaving IEC. He's trapped inside. I'll go. So she gets very nervous. She goes to the kitchen and takes a knife that was inside the drawer and says to herself that Seek is leaving the room, will I? Then think about it. She then calls the police and tells the police that Ekta attacked and asks the police to shoot from there. The police are then to Ira, who goes to protect her and asks Ira if she is okay and asks Ira, where is she right now? Ira replies that he locked Ayekta inside the room. The police then told Ira that if she wants, they can go get her to protect her, but that this way they will not be able to arrest Ayekta and much less Taskin. Iran then tells the policeman that he will wait until tomorrow, as he very much wants Hector to be arrested. Meanwhile, Oren is in his office thinking about going to Sarah. He is very worried about the two. Ron then remembers Ira's words telling him to leave her alone. Ron then shoots himself that Ira no longer wants him in his life and that therefore he can no longer think about her. Right now, Herhan arrives at the scene and asks Organ if he has any problems. Organ replies no, but asks Herhan too. Go watch the house where he's living with Ayekta to make sure he's okay. He wakes up from his dream completely frightened. They seem the same. God forgive me. What kind of dream is this? May God bless me and help me. Lord, please don't make me do evil. Please don't separate me from what is right. He then begins to say a prayer. Meanwhile, Ayekta is stuck in the room. He then starts yelling to go open the door for him. Ayekta then starts screaming, calling Ira useless and saying, for Ira here, she needs to open the door for him. Until after a few seconds, Ira will actually open the door for Ayekta. Ayekta finds it strange that Ira actually went to open the door for him, Ire. So he walks into the room and says, are you okay? Ayekta looks at Ira in surprise. He then puts a bag on top of a table he has in the room and begins to remove some medicine from inside it, and until then asks Ira, why is it that she opened the door for him? Ira then tells Yekta that he is not that kind of man and that she has not met this version of him, and tells Yekta that he is lost and tells Yekta that he knows he is going through hard times and she understands that. I will. Then shoots Yekta that all these difficult things made her lose her balance and ended up accomplishing impossible things. I will then disparate that the only thing she wants in this life is her daughter. Ire then asks Yekta to compose herself so they can continue. And until then, he says to Ira, okay, you know what? I would do anything for my daughter. I wish I hadn't lost it yesterday. Ira, I'm sorry. Come on, let's take it slow and tell Ira everything will be the way she wants it to be. Ira then say, yes, it will be perfect. Ira then begins to bandage the injury he made on his head, which is when he broke a glass vase on his head. Meanwhile, Orlon dawns awake. He couldn't sleep. Afif will wish his son good morning. Orlon replies to Afif's good day. Afif then approaches Orlon and says, it's been a long time since we enjoyed such a calm and quiet morning, hasn't it, son? Orlon then just nods his head. Afif ends up feeling a little sick. Orlon then asks Official, okay? Fif replies yes, tells Orm that she is just a little tired. Fif then tells Orm that it will let him work. The Fifth leaves Orm's office and ends up meeting Sultana in the hallway of the mansion. Sultana then warns Fifth that he left breakfast for her in the room and shows the Fifth her cell phone where I counted messages from Orm's lawyer, the one who is blackmailing Fifth. The Fifth then reads the message. In the message it is written, I hope you remember what I told you yesterday. I look forward to hearing from you. Sultana asks Afif if there is a problem. Afif then tells Sultana that the lawyer is blackmailing her and asks Sultana to take care of him without causing any more trouble. Sultana tells Afif that she should stay carefree as she will resolve the matter. Meanwhile, Elif is preparing breakfast as Kwe arrives in the kitchen and asks Elif if the sewing box is broken. Elif answers yes and says she lost the needle. Askis then asks Elif to get ready as they are going out. Elifem then asks Askis where they are going. Askis then tells Elif that they are going to the town of Upsutun. Elif then begins to remember when she was talking to Asix in the dining room of the house, and she told Asix that she would very much like to know that city. Susan overhears the conversation from outside the kitchen. She then quickly enters the kitchen and offers to go along with the two. But Asikis tells Susan that unfortunately this time she won't be able to go. He tells Susan that she can take her there another time. Askis then tells Elif that she should get ready now, as they need to leave early. Askis then tells Susan to finish. To prepare breakfast, Susan, as you can tell, was really very happy. A note for those who don't know me, this is totally ironic. Meanwhile, Orhan is in his office working. He receives a call. Is Define calls Orhan to have coffee with her. Orlan accepts Define's invitation. They then end the call and Set and exudes a huge smile, since he apparently faithfully believes that maybe now he has some chance with Aura. Meanwhile, Ira, Sarah, and Hector are in the living room of the house. Ira's giving Sarah breakfast. Sarah asks Ira how her father hurt Hector's neck, then tells Sarah that he hit his head on the door and that it was just the little accident. He asks the girl not to worry about it and Hector. Then he asks Sarah to forget it and asks the girl what she will want to do when they move back into his old house. Sarah is silent and until then promises Sarah that they will go back to being the happy family they were in the past. Right now, who's texting Ira and who's over there? The message, and in the message it is written that they should meet in the park next to the house where they are living within 30 minutes, and Akta then tells Ira that they should take Sarah to the park because then Taskin will not suspect that he is setting up a plan against him. Ira then asks Ayekta if it is really feasible to take it. For Sarah, as it may be too dangerous for the girl, and Ekta then tells Ira that his men will be around the park and that it will not be dangerous for the girl. Ira ends up agreeing with Ekta to avoid fights, but Ira is very nervous and really doesn't want to get Sarah into it. Ira then takes Sarah to the room to put a clothes on the girl so she can take her to the park, and Akta then calls Ibrahim and asks him to be in the park next to the house where they are living within 30 minutes, because he will meet with Rascom there, and until then takes a gun and leaves the room. Meanwhile, Erham, Orham's investigator, can be seen spying on Ira's house. At that moment, Irachara and Hector leave the house. Erham quickly disguises himself, pretending he is fixing his car. Ira and Hector and Sarah pass by Erham without noticing his presence. Irachara and Hector head towards the playground, near the house where they are living, because there they will meet. Darko, Task, and Eren are following them. Meanwhile, Elif and Asix are sitting on a stool in the city where Elif wanted to meet. Elif told Asix that the city has such a different atmosphere. Elif then begins to tell Asix that the name of that city, which is the name of a prophet of their religion, was named after that prophet. He then begins to tell the story of the prophet to Asix, from his entire trajectory until the day he died in the city and the city was named after him. The ones who are impressed by the fact that Elife knows so much about the history of that prophet and the fact that she knows their religion very well. He then shoots Askis that in her opinion, this prophet is a spiritual guardian for every host of that city. At all times, Ask stays attentive to what Elif is telling him. Askis then looks at Elif and says, "You are a person who prays. Then surely the prophet is also a spiritual guardian for you." Elif then tells Askis that surely the prophet is also a guardian for him. Askis then confesses to Elif that he never said any prayer. Elif gets scared and says, "You never prayed," and says, "My prayers are always accepted. God forbid I ever pray. If you want, I can help you, and for sure you will start having this habit instantly. Just tell the prophet everything you would like to happen, all the problems of your day, and also give thanks for the good things that happen in your day." And tell Aliski I forgot the prayer he says is from within his heart. I'm sure she'll be accepted. Meanwhile, Rachid is working and ends up finding some garbage bags of Sarah's Irie things, which were removed from the room at Orla's request. He then starts messing with things and ends up finding some toys, some puzzles. He also finds the wrath scarf. Rach then begins to tell himself that he leads that handkerchief to his sultana. She is sure to forgive him and let him move back into the house with her, but Rach ends up letting a handkerchief fly. At this moment, Warholm is leaving the mansion, and guess what? He ends it all head-on with the handkerchief that Rach had let fly. Orholm then looks at Ira's handkerchief right in front of him and is frozen, staring at the handkerchief. Ram then approaches the handkerchief and picks it up from the ground. Ram then starts looking at the handkerchief. Her look is sad. Ram then begins to remember the time she spent with Ira, when they camped like Sarah in the forest. Ram also remembers Ira's harsh words, telling him to leave her and her family alone and slamming the door in his face. Ram comes back from his thoughts and takes a deep breath because it is really very difficult for him to live this moment. Ram then says, it really looks like he needs it. Forget the past and look forward. At that moment, Rachid arrives at the organ and apologizes for letting the handkerchief fly and tells the organ that he was removing the trash from the mansion. Oren then hands the handkerchief to Rachid and leaves the mansion without looking back. Meanwhile, Groups is in the hospital taking care of EC. Groups tries desperately to get the girl to eat, but accedes to Groups who are not hungry. Groups tries to tell funny stories to girl to try to cheer her up. But unfortunately, it's still very depressing. Issei shoots Grubos that is not hungry and that even water at this moment will not pass through his throat and asks that Grubos not insist. Grubos then tells Issei that it is only a matter of time until her hunger returns. Grubos then tells Issei that he needs to leave for a moment but that he will be back soon. Then he gets a call from Susan. Susan asks him how she is and says to him that she is very worried about her. Susan then tells him that he has excellent news to give her. This question, what is it? Susan then tells him that within a week, Elif will leave their house because her father will come to pick her up. Susan then fills him with hope and asks for the girl to get well soon, as she will need all her health to win back Aziz. Once Elif leaves their house, they then end the call and the smile on Isi's face is visible even in China. Susan then tells herself that everything will be all right now. Susan doesn't like EC, but Gorbos is very rich and Susan likes money. Meanwhile, EC begins to eat as he has regained all his spirits. Grubus then returns to the room and ends up seeing this recommendation. Grubus is overjoyed at Superman's sudden recovery. Grubus then sits next to EC. The two begin to eat. Meanwhile, Askis went to fetch a coffee for Elif. They are then drinking coffee sitting on the stool. Askis asks Elifa what she intends to do when she leaves. Elif then shoots Asix, who intends to take care of her father so that he doesn't do anything wrong again. Elefi tells Parasix that usually she stays at home and takes care of the house, cleans the house and makes food, washes clothes, and tells Parasix that she does not intend to do anything outside her house. Elif then says, "But what about you?" Askis then replies that he will continue with his work. Elif then says, "Well, in that case, be more careful. You should be afraid of your job." Askis then looks at Elif and says, "If his father gets into any trouble again, well, I'm here in case you need me." Askis then asks Elif if she has finished her studies and tells Elif that she could study again if she wanted to. Elif replies that she would, but she doesn't know if her father will let her do that or what life will provide for her from now on. Askis then tells Elif that maybe her father is in town. Askis then tells Elif that he will ask someone. Meanwhile, Oran is having coffee with Define. Define is telling Ormans about an affair she had recently that was very funny. Define, so he's talking non-stop and Ormans is paying attention. Define, then apologize to Ormans if you ended up talking too much. Ron then tells Define that there is no problem and tells Define that he needs to ask her a question and asks her to define it. Respond immediately if possible. Oran then asked, define in marriage, define, close your face at the time, for you know that the request is not sincere. Meanwhile, Elif continues to sit on the stool with Aziz. Aziz brought a water for Elif, the water from which she cannot open at all. Aziz then shoots Elif if she wants, he can open it for her. Elif then shoots Aziz that she doesn't give up easily. And he keeps trying to open the water. Asks then to Elif that she is a stubborn one. After a few minutes of losing water from 10 to 0, Aziz takes Elif's water and quickly and opens the water in 3 seconds, showing Elif that he is strong and she is weak. At this time, the man passes by selling cotton candy. Elif then quickly begins to remember the day she, Aziz, and her Arif had a picnic, and on the occasion he told his Arif to Aziz that his mother always bought cotton from. For her, Elif returns from her thoughts and asks quickly, goes to the Lord and buys cotton candy for Elif. Elif is very moved by Aziz's attitude. She then thanks Aziz and tells him he didn't need to do that. Aziz then tells Elif that he remembered that she likes cotton candy. Elif then tells Aziz that she reminded him of unnecessary things, but tells Aziz that it's okay as she also remembers unnecessary things. Aziz then tells Elif that he remembers once telling him that he went up a hill with his mother. Elif then says, yes, you're right. This was before my mother got sick. That day was really nice. After my mother got sick, I never thought I would live another moment like that again. Elif then thanks Aziz for bringing her that city. For that city, her environment is making her remember those happy days she spent with her mother. Aziz then tells Elif that he took her for a walk since she doesn't go out to have much fun, and tells Elif that he promised her that he would take her to a place like that, but that he actually believes he brought her there because he wanted her to remember him in a good way and not as the bad way he treated her at the beginning of their relationship. Elif then looks at Aziz and realizes that he truly regrets everything he has done. Meanwhile, Ira and Hepta and Sarah arrive at the playground. Herhan continues to watch them from afar. Sarah's here. You're playing with the swing. I will then remove her from the swing and take the girl to another toy. But at that moment, Taskim appears in the square. Taskim is armed. He then goes to IEC, is pointing gun at him and says, look who's here. Aaron is seeing everything from afar. He quickly pulls his gun out of his pocket and stands on alert, and Ekta raises his hands, showing Taskim that he doesn't want to fight. Task then fires the Ekta that everything has a price, that for him to get rid of it, he wants the flash drive. But at that moment, the police arrive at the square and end up arresting Taskim and Ekta, then look at the anger and say, police, you called the police. At that moment, the policeman turns to Ayekta and says, Ayekta. And he says his last name, which I don't know. You are also arrested as those who are taken by other policemen, while the policeman who pretended to be a plumber and went to Ira's house points the gun at ECTA and tells him to surrender because he is also arrested. And Hector looks at Ira and says, you set this whole thing up. It was all a setup, wasn't it? The cop then looks at Hector and says, you're under arrest, and Hector for smuggling gold. And Hector then starts pretending he wants to say goodbye to Sarah. He then begins to approach Sarah, heel and say, daughter, give daddy one last hug. Daughter says goodbye to daddy until Ekta picks Sarah up and points the gun at her, making Sarah hostage, and Ekta then points the gun at Sarah and says, if you come near me, I will kill her. Ira becomes desperate at Ekta's attitude, while Sarah desperately calls for her mother. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the new channel if you are not already subscribed. Thanks for watching until the next video.